So if we've been in spirituality very long, we have probably heard that desire is something that we should try to get rid of. But desire is energy, right? Sometimes it shows up in different ways, but often shows up in a useful way. Like, it is of benefit to the body to desire to take care of it, to feed it well, to get a good night's sleep. There's nothing wrong with the desire to productive life or care and provide for one's family. Or there's lots of things that we can do that come out of this movement of energy, this movement of desiring to move in some way in the world. So we can see that none of that's, as we've been talking about it so far, is problematic, and we don't need to talk about that aspect of desire further. What Nisargadatta said about it was that it's not the desire itself that's problematic. It's what we desire, where we focus that energy. So in a dysfunctional use of that desire, we probably all have had experiences about what that looks like. It can be, the most common are things that maybe things that we eat that we know aren't really good for us, but we really, really want them. The fourth cookie, the other half pint of ice cream, the third glass of wine, whatever that movement is. And, we're not saying that, we shouldn't enjoy eating or enjoying ourselves and enjoying the physicality that we get to experience through this body-mind. All of that's fine. But it's worth looking at why, what is fueling that urge to sort of distract ourselves. Maybe it's just boredom. I don't want to face being bored, so I'll just do something temporarily cover up that sensation. Okay. But then we can really look at how we're spending our life energy. If it's the occasional, thing that we just need a break, we need to, go to the concert, watch the game, whatever, fine, no problem. But if it's a consistent pattern where we avoid looking at or for the basis for this sort of internal sense of lacking something that feels important to us. We can go about that two ways. We can either look at where that sense of lack, let's say, arises from, what is the underlying cause of that, or we can try to just put a Band-Aid on it and forget about it as quickly as possible. Most people do the latter. I just don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel, face my unworthiness. I don't want to face being alone. I don't want to face being bored this evening, and so we chase around after life experiences to avoid feeling more fundamental in some sense. So, like I say, if it's the occasional night out but an easy way to test to see what is really most important in our life is just to see how we spend our time and energy. If we say, well, what is most important is enlightenment, but we, I don't know, go to the local pub every evening for the, and close it out at 2 a.m., then, we can see that maybe what we're saying and what we're doing are two different things. Okay, like we were saying, this movement of desire is energy. So the idea of tamping that down, trying to suppress it, isn't the right approach to it. For one thing, it doesn't work very well. They've been fighting the war on drugs for 50 years, and prohibition didn't work out so well, and Nancy Reagan's just say no didn't really do much. And so we can't just reject something that the body mind really wants to do without looking at what underlies that movement, that need to put a fix on things. But that same energy can be used in the investigation to transcend. By transcend, I don't mean to ignore that underlying feeling. I mean to really investigate it to the point that it no longer holds a leash on us, right? Because we can't really ever drop something that we don't understand, that we haven't really looked at. So let's see, a common desire, it might be in the form of, let's say, anger, that surge of anger that sort of rises up so suddenly it's maybe difficult to control, and then it, comes out our mouth, and then, maybe hours or days or years later we regret what. But that the anger is really founded on top of a underlying belief, like this, whoever we're, angry with, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't be like that. It's not right. It's not fair. Whatever the argument with life is. And the response is anger, a need to try to control the situation or the other person, right? The desire to get what we want. So desire is always about the difference between where I think I am and where I think I want to be. Something, I need to add something or I need to subtract something. I need to grasp something, or there's an aversion to something. Get something or push something away. So anything other than as things are in this moment. So that's the energy of this desire. So there's a difference when we talk about desire to attain something. There can be this sense of longing, right? A longing to let's say, discover our deepest nature. And that movement, if it's a true longing, and we pour our life energy into really trying to understand what this life is about. You could call it desire, but it's a useful way to use that energy if we choose to. There's no wrong path here. There's things to be learned on every path that we take. But if we choose to go in that direction, that energy of desire, if it's in the form of this longing to understand, is different than the sense of I want that goal. I want to get enlightened. Right? I want nirvana. I want to be eligible for heaven. That's goal-oriented, right? So on any goal-oriented movement of this desire, there's two things happening. One is whatever it is that I want is not present now, right? Enlightenment, not present now, but if I do everything right and work hard at it, it will be present at some future point. So that's the hope. That's the goal orientation. Deny its presence now and sort of grasp after something specific in the future, which different. There's a sense of it being different because this whole movement of wanting desire, wanting something for who? For me, right? The separate me. I want to get enlightened. Why? So I feel good, so I have eternal bliss. I've heard about it and I want it. Right? So that movement is actually, in a sense, not all that different than, I don't know, wanting a new car. If I had that, I would feel better. I mean, that's the presumption. But the false assumption that's involved is that what I am seeking is not present now. So it's very much like a denial of now in favor of what may be possible and hoped for at some future point in time. So that movement is this goal-oriented desire movement has very much to do with the sense of personal self. I want, right? Grasping. Right? I want that for me. I want that experience for me. And the only problem with that is what we wake up from is the identity with this personal self, the sense of a separate individual entity apart from the rest of existence. So the Buddha told us 2,500 years ago that there actually is no personal self. Let's just take that as a concept for the moment. If there is no separate personal self, to whom does this enlightenment accrue? It's a good question, right? So the idea that a separate personal self desires enlightenment is exactly the imaginary roadblock that needs to be seen through. And how does that get seen through? By really investigating whether this, we can meditate and do, change our diet and do lots of practices and go on retreats and listen to YouTube videos and all of that. But what it really comes down to is the willingness to investigate it for ourselves, not as a concept, not as an idea, but as something that is as real as it gets. As an investigation of what is it precisely that is living this life. So what's living this life is not an idea, it's not a concept, it's not, some hoped for future event. It's not a feeling. It's not a high state. It's what's present for all of that. If what is sought is our essential being, that which is the most essential aspect of who we are, if that were absent for even a moment, even a split second, we would, vaporize, disappear. So if what is most essential to our being is unavoidably here already, and is what is living this life, whatever that may be, it would have to be present already. And if we are looking for it in some future event, a future feeling state, a future spiritual adventure, we're denying its presence now. And now is where we live our life. If we can't find it now, we will never find it. Whenever this now moment is. And one of the things about this movement of the desire is that, and the reason that it's, problematic for spiritual seekers is that it feels necessary. It feels like I need to give in to the body-mind because there's this powerful energy that moves. You might try to sort of control it, manage it, but it can well up and carry us along. Powerful energy. The only thing is that when we're desiring something in a goal-oriented kind of way, there's two possibilities. One, we don't get what we want. And two, we do get what we want. So if we don't get what we want, we're disappointed if if it's something that we bet the farm on. And that causes a certain amount of suffering, let's call it. But even when we do get what we want, the pleasure that we were anticipating doesn't last forever. It may feel really good, and we don't have to deny that it feels really, really good. We really want to be able to buy a particular car, just to keep it simple. And finally we buy the car, we have the car, we bring it home, the neighbors are impressed, we feel good, our self-image is enhanced, everything feels good, and we don't need to pretend that it doesn't. And then that feeling may last. I mean, a week later, we still really, really like having this car. A month later, we like the car. A year later, yeah, it's a car. Right? It doesn't last. So even when we get what we want, even that hoped for spiritual experience, it's like, yeah, it was really good and powerful, and I can tell my friends about it, but it faded over time. I mean, I can still remember it, I can still describe it, but the feeling of being enveloped by it, that's not, so even when we get what we want, it's like it's never quite enough, and it doesn't last as long as we would like. So either way, when we require something beyond ourselves to fulfill ourselves, we will be disappointed, whether we don't get it or we do get it. Either way. And then eventually we might come back to wondering what it is that we expect to feel when we get this hoped for experience. Let's take enlightenment. What I want is enlightenment. Why? Because I've heard it involves eternal bliss. Who wouldn't want that? So the question is how I expect I'll feel when I reach some future desired state. What is it about that is preventing me from feeling the same thing in this moment? The only thing that's preventing that is the belief that I require that particular experience in order to feel like that. If there's not that belief in place, like I need, whatever, fill in the blank, I need to meditate 2 hours a day for 30 years. I need to fix all my bad habits. I need to have the right set of beliefs. I need to give up this habit. Whatever our belief is, that's the veil through which we are, that's the sort of the false barrier that we erect that we think we have to jump over. But they're all founded on the idea that I require something that's external to me, namely some circumstance or situation or event or promotion or object in order to feel, fill in the blank, whatever we expect that future state to be. And then the question is, what is the barrier to feeling that in this moment? And the only answer we can ever come up with is a concept. Like, I believe that this is what I need to do. And what if that wasn't true? What if you spent 30 years holding on to a belief that there was a prerequisite to the recognition of your essential nature? What if it just wasn't true? What if everything that was needed to recognize what you truly are is and must be present now? Even if you held that as a conceptual possibility, like I wonder how would my life be different if that were true? If I weren't seeking something to be fulfilled 10 or 20 years down the road, but I was open to the possibility that it may already be present now, how would that change my life? I'm not saying take it on as a belief. I'm saying take it on as a possibility and then find out for yourself. And the good news is all of this is possible to discover in our own direct experience. We don't need a set of beliefs, and we don't need an intermediary. We do just need a willingness to look for ourselves with integrity, self-honesty, a little bit of courage to see what's actually the case.